And at the World Economic Forum, Trade and Industry and Competition Minister Park Stau has dismissed criticism of the proposed 100 billion rand infrastructure fund to aid black businesses. Some opposition has been raised, with critics saying this may be a new form of tax on big business. Stau discussed this matter at length with the business editor Xolani Mbanjwa on the sidelines of the 55th annual gathering.
It is the fifth and final day of the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, where South Africa was a show of force with the biggest delegation amongst all the nations that were gathered here. Over 60 heads of state were gathered here on the Alps of the Swiss country to make sure that they try and make this world a better place for those who are less fortunate countries and low-income countries. But for South Africa, it signals the start of a good year, particularly as it holds the presidency of the G20. I'm not alone. I'm with the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stau, to sum up really the significance and the key takeaways from this year at the World Economic Forum. Minister, thank you for your time as always. The top line for you, the key takeaways after 5 days of a grueling week, what are those?
Well, a number of points, actually. If you think about it, the fact that we're hosting the G20 and are president of G20 this year, and the alignment with the World Economic Forum is important. The commitment by the World Economic Forum and other agencies to work with South Africa, including countries, to work with South Africa towards the agenda of the G20. We've made commitments about what the G20 should address. The President indicated our emphasis on critical minerals, on ensuring that we facilitate beneficiation and industrialization at source or as close to source as possible, the fact that we require massive investments in infrastructure, the fact that we need to address issues of cost of capital. The reality is that for countries in the developing South, we pay much more for capital than, in fact, our counterparts in the developed North. The reality is that these matters need to be addressed. Otherwise, you stunt the development of countries in the global South. So these are all matters that we both put firmly on the agenda here, but also identified organizations and countries to work with as we go towards the G20. This morning, we also had a session of trade ministers, and the session of trade ministers facilitated by the government of Switzerland, jointly with the World Trade Organization. And the issues were also related to, amongst others, the G20, but also taking into account that next year would be the ministerial conference of the World Trade Organization that's in Cameroon, at which first conference there would be discussions about the future of the world trading systems. The reality is that world trading has been impacted by unilateral decisions by countries, by decisions to undermine, if you like, the functioning of the World Trade Organization by certain countries, by lack of recognition of dispute resolution mechanisms in the World Trade Organization. So we need to rebuild a trading system that's equitable. We need to ensure that we reform the World Trade Organization, and we've agreed. And in fact, I'm having a further discussion with the Director General of the World Trade Organization to say how do we work together to ensure that this year becomes a year in which we discuss trading systems and ensure equity in the trading environment.
A lot of South Africans always wonder whether the expense justifies South Africa either being at BRICS, FOCAC, the United Nations. When you talk to those people about what South Africa is spending to get such big delegations to these global important forums, what do you say to them about the importance of making South Africa an investment destination?
Well, it is important because you need to understand that, in fact, at the World Economic Forum, you have countries, you have business, you have leading business leaders that are here that are looking for investment destinations, that are looking for solutions around trade and investment. We've had interface with business people, with countries, with potential investors into our country. So it is an opportunity to interface at different levels. We have had different ministers that have had their own bilateral engagements. We've had platforms at which we engage collectively with other organizations and countries. And there's huge value in ensuring that we're able to interface with investors, because investors are not coming into a vacuum. They want to know the destination they are going to. You need to interface with them. You're competing with other countries for these investments, and it's important that you're able to put your best foot forward.